Hey there, viewers. Some rooms are built to keep secrets buried. And when the FBI uncovers one, it's never just about what's inside. A hidden black room connected to Diddy has just come to light, and the footage recovered from it is shifting the entire narrative of the case. Chapter 1. The Off-Grid House. I'll be honest, I thought it'd be one of those forgettable days. Paperwork, remote location, nothing that needed a full squad. Just me and two other agents heading upstate to look over a property that had recently been seized. Standard protocol. Nothing flashy. The house wasn't even listed under Diddy's name. It was buried beneath layers of shell companies, each dissolved long ago, connected to an old record label that hadn't dropped anything in years. A tax ID matched with a routing number, and just like that, we had a green light to inspect, photograph, and catalog the contents. I expected maybe some. Gold records, old liquor bottles, outdated studio gear. Rich people tend to hoard their nostalgia when no one's looking. I've been on raids where the worst thing we found was a fridge full of expired champagne, but something about this place felt wrong. I felt it in my neck before we even got out of the SUV. The house sat 2 miles off the main road in the Catskills, tucked behind an old fire trail that barely showed up on satellite. The GPS gave up halfway, so we navigated by compass and instinct. When we arrived, I knew immediately this wasn't abandoned. The lawn was freshly trimmed. The gravel driveway was spotless, like someone had swept it clean. Window panes gleamed in the sun. Not a speck of dust anywhere. No cameras, no alarm system, but we were being watched. I could feel it. Inside, the air was cool and dry, climate-controlled. That was the first red flag. Most rural, seized properties smell like mold and mouse droppings. This one smelled like ozone and citrus cleaner. Pristine. Maintained. We split. Up to sweep the first floor. No bedrooms, no clothes, no signs of anyone living there. 2 kitchens, one small, one industrial, but no dishes, no mess. One fridge was fully stocked, but every expiration date was within the week, like someone had staged it and walked away. A leather couch setup looked untouched, not a single cushion dented. Thick blackout curtains hung in every room, heavy enough to block out all light and sound. At noon, it felt like 3 a.m. I found a media room with a projector mounted to the ceiling, but no screen, just a white wall. A console with ports and drive bays stood below it. All were empty, stripped clean. It was like someone gutted the tech and left a shell behind. The silence was suffocating. My boots squeaked on the floor and I wasn't even trying to be quiet. The walls were thick. When I tried calling Agent Vezzi over commas, the signal died. Even my cell phone dropped out. And we were less than 2 hours outside the city. Then I noticed the electrical system. Redundant generators in a side shed. Silent. Immaculate. Connected to underground fuel tanks. This wasn't built for luxury, it was for containment. Power systems like you'd see in a secure lab or server farm. I found the stairwell by accident, hidden behind a bookshelf. No dramatic switch or trap door, just a magnetic seal that released when I pressed against the frame. A tiny hiss of air, and the wall cracked open an inch. No signal, no backup. So I went down alone. The stairs were concrete, the steps rubber-coated. 2 flights, then the air changed, denser, more humid. Condensation slicked the walls. But there was no mildew, no stench. Just thick, damp air that clung to your skin. At the bottom, a single steel door, reinforced, industrial, set deep into the concrete with heavy bolts. No keypad, no lock, just a manual latch, scrawled in faded black marker. Restricted. Black Room Archive 3. The silence was deeper here, like the room itself was holding its breath. I tightened my grip on the flashlight. My hands were slick in the gloves. Then I pulled the latch. Heat hit me first. Thick, wet heat, like stepping into an attic in July. The beam from my flashlight pierced the dark and landed on something curved and reflective. Not quite glass, more like a coated lens. Took another step. Steam curled along the floor. The smell hit next. Warm, synthetic, hard to place. Not decay, not chemicals. Something handled, like plastic. And underneath it, faint but cloying, baby oil. Not sprayed, soaked in. The flashlight swept left. Wires, consoles, embedded lighting. In rubber tiles, some of it flickering. Chairs bolted to the floor, velvet upholstered. A line of dim red bulbs along one wall, small, like golf balls, barely glowing. Then I saw it, far back. A shape. Not a person. Something else. Still. Cold. Wrong. I moved toward it and heard a single click, like a camera adjusting. Nothing more. But the steam shifted. Not from me. Something else was in that room. I didn't run. I didn't call for backup. I stood there, flashlight shaking in my hand, shining over a space that felt like it had never wanted to be opened. This wasn't a panic room. It wasn't a vault. And it sure as hell wasn't a studio. It was something else, built to be sealed away, built to be forgotten. And I knew then, without a doubt, it should have stayed locked. It was total. Not just darkness, the engineered kind. No windows, no light leaks, not even emergency exit signs. The kind of dark where even your own hands feel like they're vanishing. I felt the floor before I saw it. Jenkins and I were issued portable battery floods, and while he set his up, I moved by touch. I thought I was stepping onto a floor mat, like those anti-fatigue pads in labs, but it didn't end. I took 3 more steps, still no solid footing. The ground was soft, yielding slightly, not like rubber bouncing back, more like something absorbent. Soaking. Once the lights were up, we understood. The entire floor was lined wall to wall in thick black neoprene sheets, some newer, others worn, through. Underneath, a yellowed, sponge-like foam that later tested as a high-absorption industrial material. We peeled back sections. The underlayer was stained. Oils, some dried, others still slick. Not spills, reuse, repetition, saturated, wiped down, used again. There were imprints, faint patterns like knees, elbows, even a distorted handprint dragging awkwardly. Jenkins and I exchanged a glance. No words. Just kept moving. At first glance, the equipment looked like studio gear, AV racks, projection systems, wall-mounted controls. But nothing was powered. More importantly, there were no microphones, no mixers, just video. Everything was routed for visual capture, no audio infrastructure at all. It wasn't meant to record what was said, only what was seen. Then we found the shelves, built into the far wall, velvet-lined like display cases. Dozens of clear plastic containers, some still labeled with inventory stickers. At first we assumed personal care items, lotions, maybe cosmetics, but deeper in, we found 5-gallon drums, unmarked except for handwritten Sharpie labels. Slick. Application 2, stay wet. We sent samples to the DEA. The analysis came back, traced THC, lidocaine, and in some cases an unknown synthetic compound not in any database. The consistency matched baby oil, but these weren't off the shelf. These were bespoke, ordered repeatedly, manufactured for a purpose. In a drawer beneath one of the trays, we found gloves, long, elbow-length velvet on the outside, stiff with residue. Tests confirmed traces of skin cells, makeup, and faint quantities of controlled substances. Whatever these gloves were used for, it was part of the ritual. Then we turned to the drives. No standard labels, no serials, just handwritten titles on. Matte black shells, mostly red marker, a few in silver ink. 27 drives. Only 5 had recognizable titles. The rest were marked with glyphs, mathematical symbols, looping arrows. One of the glyphs matched a symbol we'd seen in an old civil suit, long buried, quietly dismissed. We cloned the drives to a secure server. No folders, no metadata, no audio, just 1 to 3 video files per drive, each under 20 minutes. Each stripped of identifying codec information, each one looping. The first clip I opened was labeled Freak Rev Slow. Red lighting fills the frame. A woman crawls, slowly, deliberately, naked, but not sexual. Her movements were precise, controlled, like following unseen instructions. Her lips moved, but there was no sound. Behind her, 2 figures in smooth black masks, no eyes, no mouth openings, stood completely still. I paused the video. Behind them, on the wall, the same glyph from the old Ventura case. Half wiped, as if someone tried to clean it off. I matched. The lines, the angles, it wasn't decoration, it was a signature. We kept watching. Every clip had the same elements: red lighting, fixed camera, different subjects performing choreographed crawling or movements. They didn't speak, but the patterns repeated. Rehearsed. Structured. These weren't memories, they were instructions. In one loop, a woman breaks form. She turns toward the camera too early. Her face twists in sudden awareness. She mouths something. Again, again, again. I noted it in the log. These weren't performances. They were programming. Then came the mislabeled clip. That's what everyone called it, until 32 seconds in, when audio played for the first time. Filtered, mechanical, male. Don't stop her if she breaks the circle. Start red mode again. The room went silent. We ran vocal analysis. 93% matched to archived recordings of Sean Combs. Diddy. This wasn't speculation anymore. This was instructional, and it wasn't directed at the woman. It was aimed at someone operating the system. We pulled the internal timestamps. Something was off. The file header said 2019, but system logs inside the equipment showed hardware updates from 2022. Someone had altered the timestamps to look older. Not once. Repeatedly. That's when we realized this wasn't a home theater. It wasn't even surveillance. It was a protocol, a behavioral conditioning system. There were rhythmic markers. Every 6 minutes, a frame blinked out. A cue, not a glitch. One analyst noticed in red mode sequence 5, the subject veered off the crawl path and stumbled. For 5 seconds, nothing. Then the strobe activated, fast, disorienting. The floor tiles in that clip matched the exact embedded circle in the physical space. Another voice followed. She's not ready. Reset the scene. That wasn't an error, that was design. Then we found the civil case. 2021. A woman identified only as CA claimed she was blindfolded, driven to a private location, and placed in a red-lit room. No windows. Oil applied to her. Skin. Masked figures behind glass. Her case was dismissed, but her description matched exactly. Her sketch included the same glyph we found on one of the chairs in the footage. We stopped calling it a studio. Our DOJ report called it what it was, a behavioral manipulation environment, a controlled system built to induce obedience through disorientation and repetition. The red mode files weren't outliers. They were the manual. We don't know how many people were involved. We don't know who was harmed, at least in ways you could see. But in one final clip, a woman stops crawling, sits up, stares directly into the lens. Not confused, not frightened. She smiles, like she finally got it. Right. In the background, a voice, muffled, distorted, says something we're still analyzing. We think it says, "Now she's complete." Chapter 5. The Thumb Drive. Nobody logged. I remember her. Young, maybe early 20s, long curly hair. She barely spoke a word. I helped her wrap herself in this thing. Not clothes exactly, just strips of fabric tied around her body. Then, she got on all fours and crawled across the room, slowly, silently. Nobody told her to. Nobody stopped her either. Behind the glass wall, I saw the silhouettes, people watching. Still, unmoving, just shapes in the dark. That night, she never came back up. Her things were still by the door. A jacket, shoes, a little purse with a broken zipper. I asked one of the security guys where she went. He just looked at me, blank, like I'd said something I wasn't supposed to. That was the first time I really thought about quitting. I didn't. The money was good, and I told myself, it was just some weird Hollywood art scene, nothing illegal. Everyone signed waivers, everyone walked in on their own. But over time, I saw things, changes. The ones who came back weren't the same. Their eyes, they lost something, not just emotion, something deeper. There was this one woman, bright, talkative, full of life. One day she stopped speaking, wouldn't meet anyone's eye. I saw her in the hallway once, just standing there, staring at a wall for 10 full minutes. I asked if she was okay. She said, "I'm fine. I'm inside now." I still don't know what that meant. And always, that music, low, heavy frequencies, like it was pressing against your chest. The lyrics were hard to catch, but the rhythm pulled at you, hypnotic. One track played again and again, a whispering voice. "You belong to the floor." That's the one that stuck with me. That's the one I hear in my dreams. And then, there was what he said. It was late. I was cleaning the gallery, wiping down the glass. I didn't think anyone was around. He was talking to someone, I never saw who. But I heard him say, "They won't believe what they're watching unless they see it break first." I don't know what he meant. I don't want to. But the way he said it, quiet, final, like it explained everything, it made me feel sick. This wasn't about pleasure or art or even power. It was about control. Transformation, taking people apart and remaking them into something else. You're going to ask me what that room was for, and I'll tell you, it wasn't sex. It wasn't some underground art installation. It wasn't a party. It was for something. And the worst part is, most of the people who went down there thought they were choosing it, but they had no idea what they were stepping into. The thumb drive. Nobody logged. I've been logging evidence for 12 years. Not glamorous work, but quiet. Predictable. You bag it, tag it, scan it, store it. You don't make assumptions, you don't ask questions. Curiosity is dangerous in this job. At least, it used to be. Until the day I found the velvet pouch. It was weeks after the Catskills property was seized. The team had combed through most of the items, cataloged, processed, cleared. But somehow, this pouch slipped through the cracks, and inside it, well, that's when everything started to unravel. Chapter 6. The Ritual's master tape. All the obvious stuff had already been processed. Drives, cameras, props, furniture, even the strange, oil-stained flooring. What was left had been dumped into a few open containers, mostly clutter, discarded. Cables, empty hard drive shells, stained towels, junk. But still, it had to be inventoried. That was my job. The velvet pouch was buried at the bottom of one of the bins. It didn't belong. Everything else was clinical, black, matte, industrial. This was different. Deep burgundy velvet, soft and hand-sewn with a tight drawstring. It felt personal, intentional. Inside was a single thumb drive, black plastic. No label, no markings, until I noticed something barely visible along the edge, a faint etching, scratched in by hand. It looked like someone had used a paperclip or a needle. That's it for the echo. I should have bagged it, tagged it, logged it like everything else. But something about the way it had been hidden, buried, made me pause. This wasn't discarded. It was placed, meant to be found, by someone who knew how to look. I remembered the case files. We'd already cataloged the labeled drives. What scared me more was this one had no label. That meant it wasn't supposed to be processed. It was meant to be understood. I ran it on an isolated system. No internet, no network, no audio without a physical key. Just a locked-down tower, an old monitor, and a keyboard. The drive contained only one file, the Etcha, Final Cut. This wasn't raw footage. It had been edited, carefully. Transitions, fades, overlapping shots, tracking angles that followed the subject. Someone had crafted this like a film. It opened in darkness, then faded in. That room again. The black walls, the red floor lights, already on. The air looked thick, hazy. A young woman walked into frame, barefoot, sleeves rolled up, hands trembling. She didn't look at the camera. She looked just off to the left, like someone was standing there. Then the voice spoke. The same filtered male voice we'd traced in earlier footage. Smooth, slightly mechanical. Guess. Recite your phrase. She hesitated, then stepped back. You may begin. Her lips trembled as she whispered, I accept what is given. I won't. Ask again. The lights shifted, just slightly. The reds deepened, grew warmer, heavier, like the atmosphere had thickened. Then the angle changed. That was the confirmation. This wasn't surveillance. Someone was directing it. Next shot, she was crawling, slowly, knees gliding over black neoprene, just like the others. But then, something strange. She passed a mirror on the far wall. It hadn't been visible before. In the reflection, I saw at least 5 other people in the room, standing, watching, some masked, others bare-faced but blurred. They weren't in the camera's view, only the mirror. I counted them twice. They were real, solid, present. But when the shot returned to the main camera angle, she was alone again. A vignette bled in, darkening the edges of the screen. Her breathing grew loud, visible, uneven. Then she stopped crawling. She turned. Suddenly. Like she'd just realized where she was. Her face twisted. Not in fear, not pain. Something worse. Recognition. She looked directly at the camera. Her mouth opened like she was about to scream. Nothing came out. You think this is footage, but this is the proof of what was accepted. That's when I paused it. Just sat there. The room felt cold, even though the fan wasn't on. The kind of cold that rises from inside your spine. I watched the ending again. Her turn. Her face. Her eyes going flat. This wasn't just documentation. This was the culmination, the moment the others had been building toward, the acceptance, or surrender, or programming. Whatever word fits best, none of them are quite right. I should have logged it, tagged it, uploaded it into the system. Instead, I picked up the phone and called my superior. I didn't introduce myself. We found it. The ritual's master tape. He was quiet. Then he told me to stay where I was, lock the system, and touch nothing else. And that's when I knew. This wasn't evidence anymore. This was a blueprint. It started with a spreadsheet. Just a simple Excel file from the asset seizure reports, dates, locations, coded expenses, company names that hadn't existed for years. At first, I thought it was routine, another celebrity laundering money through shell companies to fund private events. But the deeper I went, the more I saw the pattern, and it wasn't just fraud. It was something coordinated, dates lined up with seized properties, event expenses tied to ambiguous services, sound engineers, guest prep, lighting techs, all paid through a company called Midnight Texture. No website, no listed employees, no tax records after 2014, but the payments never stopped. And every time that name appeared, there was a spike in 3 things. Private security guest transport services, non-disclosure agreements filed within 7 days. I mapped it all out. The dates matched up almost perfectly with industry retreats, the desert weekends, Malibu parties, Atlanta gatherings, the infamous Calabasas house. All of them sold as casual get-togethers, but the receipts told another story. heavy red lighting rentals, bulk baby oil shipments, last-minute cash payments to unnamed consultants, and always blackout curtain installations, audio dampening, camera equipment with disabled microphones. At first, I thought it was a strange aesthetic choice, some kind of edgy branding. Then I read the sealed complaints. Civil cases going back 22 years, many dismissed, most settled quietly. But buried in the affidavits were echoes of the same experience. I didn't know I was being recorded. The lights were red. The room had no windows. They told me not to speak. Over and over. Same phrases. Same trauma. One name kept surfacing. Not as an aggressor, not directly, but always present. And then I found him in the footage. Not clearly. He was masked, but the posture, the ring, the watch. I'd seen them in interviews, red carpet appearances. It was him. He wasn't just a host. He wasn't just watching. He was part of the design. I froze the frame, logged it separately. Then I dug into the NDAs. Thousands of them, mostly women. Most labeled VIP, service, media confidentiality. But buried deep in the legal language were behavioral clauses I'd never seen before. Clauses about eye contact, clauses about voice modulation, clauses about response cues during recording. They weren't just silencing people, they were training them. One of the NDAs included a line that read, "Subject consents to dissonance induction and waives all future claims arising from perceptual alterations." That wasn't normal legal language. It wasn't even something most lawyers would sign, off on. And yet, there it was. Signed, dated, notarized. Something about it rang wrong. That clause haunted me. I started pulling statements from across the civil filings, old and recent. One woman claimed someone told her, "If you say no, you'll forget why you came." Another said she was led through a crimson hallway and instructed to follow the sound. A third said she was filmed while under the influence of a substance she never knowingly ingested, said the room spun while she stayed still. It all pointed to something larger than a party, something rehearsed, something ritualized. So I started compiling a private case file separate from the official evidence archive. Just theory at first, a working hypothesis. I called it loop theory. The core idea was simple. These weren't isolated events. They were iterations, trials. Each gathering was a stage in a longer sequence, a refinement, testing how far someone could be pushed before they broke, measuring which combinations, light, sound, silence, isolation, disorientation, led to surrender. And all of it meticulously recorded. Not for memory, for optimization, for study. The footage loops weren't recollections. They were instructions. The same crawl, the same red light, the same glistening oil across the floor, the same strobe patterns. That triggered compliance. It had nothing to do with pleasure. Not really. And control wasn't the final goal either. The point was deeper. Break someone. Rebuild them to move in rhythm with a coded pattern. I added still frames to my private file. Masked figures, recurring in clip after clip. Behavioral notes from past assistants, civil complaints with eerily similar language. Purchase receipts for oil, altered timestamps, and those strange NDA clauses. And then I wrote a sentence I hadn't dared put anywhere else. The Bolt thought the cameras were for insurance. They were for instruction. That file, my working theory, remains unsubmitted. I'm waiting. For the right moment. Or maybe just the right person. Because the truth is, I don't know if everyone who walked into those rooms ever fully came back out. Some of them, I think, are still crawling. One in particular, the one who wasn't supposed to be there. It was 12 seconds, that's all it took. 12 seconds to change everything we thought we understood. I was in the review room, making final edits to the grand jury presentation. The outline was simple. Lay out the patterns, introduce the loop theory, present the circumstantial links between archived footage and historical complaints. Enough to justify further indictments. Stay clinical, stay deliberate, don't shock, just open the door. Then one of the analysts came in. I recognized the look immediately. I'd seen it only once before, when someone uncovered a crate of live munitions mislabeled as scrap. Pale, tight-jawed, holding a thumb drive like it was radioactive. He didn't say a word, just placed it on the table and backed away. The label, Clip 989A, Red Mode, Final. I didn't recognize the code, but I opened it. Standard encrypted drive, one file, one video. I pressed play. It started like the others. Red ambient lighting, black lacquered flooring, a woman in the center of the frame crawling forward covered in oil. Every motion measured, practiced, familiar. We'd seen this sequence dozens of times, but then, at the 6-second mark, something shifted. The camera tilted slightly. A new angle, just enough to catch something hidden in the corner, behind one of the mirrored glass panels. Movement. A flicker of light. Reflection. It wasn't another masked observer, it was a child. A boy, maybe 8 or 9 years old, thin, pale, wearing a white shirt 2 sizes too big, sleeves draping over his hands. He was crouched, half hidden in the shadows, not roaming, not curious, watching, silent. He was holding something, a sketchbook. At first, I assumed it was a prop, left behind, forgotten. But then he slowly lifted it, both hands, like he wanted it seen, wanted someone, anyone, to notice. The page showed a crude drawing, thick black ink, a crescent symbol, split down the A, center with jagged lines radiating outward. The lines were rough, but the design was intentional. I'd seen that symbol before, not in any official report, not in anything filed under this case. It had come from a sealed deposition in 2018, an off-record interview with a trafficking survivor. She described that exact shape, said it had been drawn on the walls of a room in a Florida compound she was taken to. The symbol had never been made public, never appeared in press coverage, never made it into the official case summary. Seeing it now, in a completely different clip, in a child's hand, my blood went cold. And then the footage glitched, a flicker, a half-second distortion, like an old corrupted tape. When the image snapped back into place, the boy was gone. No motion, no transition, just gone. Erased. The woman in the foreground hadn't reacted. Neither had the masked observers behind the glass. But I couldn't unsee it. We scrubbed the footage frame by frame. In one still, his face is clearly visible. He's looking directly at the camera. Mouth open, mid-syllable. We ran a lip-sync analysis. 3 possible word matches emerged. One of them was help. The other 2 weren't much better. We checked the archive. No child logs, no participation records, no notation of minors being present. I dug deeper, back into sealed civil filings. I found one, filed in 2016, suppressed 2 months later. The complainant was listed as a minor male, age 9. The incident involved a reported disappearance during a music industry retreat involving VIP guests. The boy was a cousin of a contracted house assistant. That assistant was found 2 weeks later, unresponsive in a hotel bathtub. Ruled accidental overdose. No follow-up. No formal investigation. The boy's case, dismissed. No trace of where he went. The initials on the case file matched the employment record for one of Diddy's lesser-known Arizona properties, one that was quietly sold off just months after the case was sealed. I took all of it to my supervisor. He stared at the paused frame. The boy with the sketchbook. Then he asked the one question I didn't want to answer. Can this footage be shown to the grand jury? I told him the truth. Not yet. Not because it isn't relevant. But because the moment that child's face appears on screen, everything changes. The media gets involved. The narrative spirals. The focus shifts. The legal process turns into a spectacle. And worse, there are implications we're not ready to confront. Because if that boy was real, if he wasn't a hallucination, a camera trick, a planted frame, then this isn't just about coercion, or abuse, or even illicit surveillance. It's about active concealment. It's about systems designed not just to break people, but to erase them. We locked the footage. No digital copies, no network access, 3 physical drives, stored under triple seal, protocol. That night, alone in my office, I watched the last frame again. The boy's face, the sketchbook, the symbol, and I wrote a line in my personal notes. Not for court, not for publication, just for me. We thought we were documenting crimes, but we were decoding a language, one that was never meant to be understood by outsiders, one built into the walls. The next morning, the lead investigator read through the final report. Over 200 pages. Half of it technical documentation, hardware inventories, clone logs, metadata extractions, each drive cataloged, each clip scrubbed for encryption layers, simultaneous timelines reconstructed, loop overlaps diagrammed. That was the science. Then came the objects. Velvet gloves, half-empty vials, oil infused with tranquilizers. The mixtures weren't casual. They weren't for pleasure. They were calculated. Resistance eroders. Every loop followed choreography. Repetition wasn't an accident. It was a blueprint. Masked figures, identical motions, identical timing, the same nod, the same exit. Even the day lights obeyed a cadence. Predictable, patterned. Then there were the symbols again, painted in oil, scratched into wood, reflected faintly in curved glass. One of them matched a glyph from an old trafficking bust buried in closed-case files. Another symbol had been found in the margins of a witness note, someone who recanted within days after sudden legal pressure. The images had always felt like noise. Now they felt like warnings. The interviews confirmed it. Former staff, ex-assistants. One contractor who'd helped design an off-grid sublevel beneath a property never listed in zoning permits. Each of them described the same layout. Side elevator entry, oil stations, soundproof walls, and the mirrored gallery. Not one called it a party. One called it the Velvet Box. Another, the Obedience Suite. And still another said it was just the loop. The final section of the report had no title. Just a disc. One clip. The then. Woman crawled. Again. Familiar. Oil across the black floor. Red light pulsing in rhythm. Behind her, the mirror. And behind that, 2 masked figures. Still. Watching. The lead paused the clip. Studied their posture. It struck her. They weren't just observers. They were part of the scene. Meant to be seen. Not by the woman. Not in the moment. But by whoever watched the footage later. She whispered it aloud. This wasn't a crime scene. This was a manual. This wasn't filmed for power. It was filmed to instruct. Because power is messy. But instruction? That's something else. Cold, surgical, reproducible. She sealed the disc, locked the report in its case. The folder was heavier now, not because of paper, but because of what it meant. Stamped across the cover, Black Room. Pratt evidence classified national security. Status unknown subject. Pleasure. Major. She didn't know what the grand jury would say. But she knew this. This was never about what happened inside that room. It was about what would happen next, if nobody stopped it. Because the Black Room was never a vault. It was a map.